Alright guys and girls, welcome back to more SOVL PvP. Today we've got the third and final match in the second SOVL Discord Cup. This is the 1000-point edition and we're up against a really good player, Inkviisitor Riistan. Not exactly sure how you pronounce it, but really good player, and I'll be honest, I was not prepared for this match at all. I'm currently on vacation, not in the SOVL mindset at all, and was out with the dog. Realised, lost track of time, so I had to rush back and jump straight into this one. So didn't even look at my opponent's list. I knew they were running Greenskins, and I did look at all of the lists when they were first submitted. Was pretty sure they were running lots of shooty goblins. So I thought you guys could follow along with me. So rather than go through my opponent's list now, we'll jump straight in, and it will be a surprise for all of us. So yeah, let's get straight into the match. So here you see my deployment on another one of these slightly wonky 1000-point maps with a massive lava lake here, which thought I could position my catapults this side, because if my opponent wants to put something around this side, it might take them a while to get around. I'm not sure. Also, you notice I'm doing the try hard thing. This is, as I mentioned, the third and final match, and we're currently 1-1, so really want a winning record here. And this is a try hard thing where you point in deployment your catapults the wrong way. And this is just a very minor thing that means when your opponent does their kind of, whatever it is, shift C to see what they can hit, they're not able to see. However, you can kind of do it yourself and then turn it back, if that makes sense. Just denies your opponent that little bit of information. If they're not sure if you're able to get hit through or not, they're not able to check. Otherwise, the miners up to contest both these objectives. I'm trying to learn from the last match, where if you did see that video, if you didn't, definitely go check it out. But if you did, you know that I was a little bit thrown by the distances at 1000 points, because you're more zoomed out, assume that things can move a bit further. So I want to keep things a little bit more together this time. That in that last game, my units got a little bit spread out and my opponent was able to kind of take them off one by one. So thankfully, this map has this bit of terrain on either side of the two objectives that are quite central. So it allows me to go fairly central here with my deployment. I'm not going to put my rangers, they're not rangers, they're just crossbowmen. And yes, I'm aware that handgunners would have been better in this slot, but yeah, not much experience with dwarves. Didn't deploy them that far, even though they are capable of ambushing. And yeah, let's get into this one and take a look at my opponent's deployment and take a look at their list as well. Okay, so yes, they are indeed going pretty heavy with the goblin shooting. 2 shamans here, both of them with Hex of Ruin and Primal Fury. And that is pretty scary, and something that I would have known had I checked my opponent's list. 2 chariots, which means they're able to they do put them either side of the objective, which unfortunately means they're going to be in line to come down and charge the catapults here on my right flank. You see immediately my opponent getting aggressive with that shooting, popping Hex of Ruin, and just shooting at my commander's unit. And now I'm sitting here seeing these 4 units of goblin shortbows, and I'm not entirely sure what I can do against this. I'm gonna get, really take some punishment from them. And looking at my opponent's list for the first time, I think it's a really nice, well-constructed list. It's very scary with 4 activations of Hex of Ruin and 4 activations of Primal Fury. It really feels like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And what I mean by that is, if you step back, you're gonna get obliterated with that amount of shooting with the Hex of Ruin. However, if I get into combat, my opponent can just pop Hex of Ruin on the Dwarves. Is really good because negates there, high defense advantage. But also, if they want, can double up with Primal Fury plus Hexaverin, which is going to wipe any of my units. And, that's going to happen no matter what I get into combat with, even if it's just a unit of shortbows. So this is going to be tough. I think, ideally, we don't even want frontal charges, which normally in this kind of matchup, it's like, yes, goblins have numbers, but dwarves are more elite. So if just on a 1v1, a fair fight against any of these kind of either short bows or the couple of units of goblin spears, that would be what we want to take. But again, with so many activations of Primal Fury plus Hex, we don't even want that. So not entirely sure at this point how I'm going to tackle this one. I'm a little bit afraid. It's unfortunate that I didn't deploy anything, or like how I deployed, maybe a mistake how I deployed the catapults, in that they're going to get charged by this chariot on the right unless I can take it out. So that's probably going to be my target for shooting. But as I kind of talked about with like sequencing and things, if you're new, it's always good to just get the movements that don't really matter out the way first, because even though I know that's what I'm going to be shooting at, there's nothing, it's not going to move into cover, there's nothing going to get in the way to block it. I don't need to take that shot, and my opponent probably could work out that that's what it's going to be, but it just keeps them guessing, right? Having the threat of shooting from your opponent can change how you maybe position things, or change how you play just a little bit, just a minor thing. It's really small gains, but for zero loss if you're just moving things that the movement, for example, the minus hit doesn't matter. You know what I mean. You see my opponent moving up onto the objective on the right one. I suppose small thing I do have in my favour is I can get on both objectives on turn one, and with this miners on the left, I can block my opponent from getting onto it with their giant. At some point, I'm going to have to worry about this chariot on the left coming round, but to be honest, I'm probably thinking that's just that's a problem for future me. I was a little bit worried, I think, about the trolls though getting into the flank of this unit of miners coming down here, and I think they maybe could have done. And in terms of combat output, as I mentioned with Hex and Primal Fury, everything's pretty scary, but obviously the trolls are the most scary, I suppose, in terms of damage output from my opponent's list. And here, get a nice, 4, I guess it's average for the catapult, 4 hits through onto the chariot, but they save them all on the 4-ups, which means now I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this second catapult, because it's highly unlikely that, very unlikely that I'm going to be able to take it out with shooting this turn. I think my crossbows are a little bit too far from the action. Again, with the size of these maps, it's somewhat hard to judge. And I mentioned it before, but yeah, my opponent popped Hexaverin on my commander's unit there, and yeah, is not much I could do. I was considering popping the horn already and trying to move it out of the way, but instead I just kind of left it to sort of take my medicine and hope that my opponent was poorly on their hit rolls, which I think they had been up until that point, but got a good number through, and yeah, failed 5 ups there. So down to half already, which I suppose isn't too bad. And here I decide to get aggressive and move up. Not only that, I decide to pop the horn straight away. So I think Something I could have done better in the last match that someone pointed out in the comments was, helping to somewhat mitigate the slow movement speed of the dwarves, just maybe using that hunter's call ability earlier on, just to make sure you're getting up into the fight rather than waiting for the most optimal point. Takes 3 more damage from that final unit of short bows, and thankfully stays alive, but is severely depleted. My opponent just shuffles their spears around the top, and I move up my final infantry unit. And thanks to that hunter's call, I am able to get up a little bit further and form this sort of natural, almost like U shape that's going to help protect, somewhat help protect the flanks of my units. So one saving grace this turn is we did get that all-important final move in turn 1, which is going to be good for the copters. I'm looking at, if I can maybe get in a position to shoot and charge. I'm wondering if with the Dwarf Engineer's copter, I face charge one of their shamans, because with the just volume of spells that the 2 shamans can put out, I really want to take them out. Really want to make those units flee, even running from a charge, anything like that, to just have a turn of stopping that activation. I'd already taken a little bit off the trolls. As you may know, trolls have regeneration, which means it's kind of all or nothing. Even with the regeneration, I think it's probably worth pulling the catapult shot into them rather than any of the hordes, where maybe picking off 3 or 4 models it's maybe not going to make the biggest difference. I decide to go move my and then I'm realizing I move my engineer here, and then I'm realizing that even though I wouldn't have had the range for the steam gun thing, whatever it has, the pistol from the engineer could have maybe gone into that troll with the one and taken off that one remaining wound, but I'd already moved it by the time I realized that. Maybe unlike the other couple of games with this list that I had against the rats, where I really wanted to protect those copters so they could get into the back line and go up against those long rifles. In this one, I'm okay to get a little bit more aggressive, maybe do like the bait and flee with the copters. And man, I was fully expecting for this second one to be able to get across to counter the or intercept the chariot on the right. I think that's why I didn't shoot at it as well. Expect I'd have a good flank, but obviously map's much bigger, didn't have the space to do that. So instead, I decided to get aggressive here. I'm able to just get that last troll off, and if my opponent wants to charge it with the trolls, fairly happy fleeing there. One very minor, as we go into the charge phase, minor mistake here. You saw with this catapult, I was kind of careful to turn the face to the chariot. This one, even though I shot over here, I could have faced it kind of here, where that was just in the arc, and shot so that my opponent would have had a frontal charge rather than a flank charge. So a very minor thing, but that means my opponent's now going to get +1 to the combat score and make it more likely that this is going to flee. And I take this charge, although that was also probably a mistake, this charge from the miners onto the spearmen, just not really thinking not considering the fact that spears, they don't want to charge, they want you to charge into them. And if I had waited, my opponent either would have had to charge into me, which then I could counter charge and they wouldn't get attacks from that last row rather. Or actually, if they just kind of like called my bluff and it was a standoff and neither of us ended up charging, I think that was probably okay for me as well, because I could move it up, maybe threaten some of these other units with that unit of miners. So probably shouldn't have taken that charge at the point that I did. And here my copters are now exposed to shooting, but with the hex, and yet they decide to hex the choppiest unit in my army, which is the Berserkers, and get really nice 5 wounds through from that first shot. Yeah, I decide not to charge with the copters because even though they're exposed, I'm not necessarily expecting my opponent to shoot at them, and indeed they don't. And this just allows them to shoot themselves and then move and maybe get into a better position for a flank, something like that. Two more go down from that second unit shooting, and it's starting to feel a little bit like deja vu, like the last match where it just feels like the Dwarves trudging up the battlefield and just getting shot to pieces and only having half an army left by the time we get actually into combat. And I really don't know what to do at this point, because again, getting into combat against this army with all of their numbers and that Primal Fury plus Hex combo isn't exactly an enticing proposition either. We also have that other chariot coming around the side. I said that's going to be a problem for future me, and indeed future came around quick, because that's going to be a problem now. And thankfully I'm able to sneak shot through onto these trolls. Again, it's not an ideal target, but we do get lucky there with taking all 3 off, which, takes out one of the models. Not an ideal target, but I don't think there are any great targets. Actually, maybe I could have waited and saved the activation for after my opponent moves the chariot, and maybe they'll be in range, thinking about it now. But yeah, this unit of Berserkers is just getting absolutely obliterated. Thankfully, my commander's unit over here did survive in the first round with just a couple of models, but yeah, let's see if the Berserkers can as well. And I want to move this unit up to just put some, well, first pressure the flank of that shortbow unit, maybe put some pressure on these other units. But I think that maybe wasn't ideal, because I've now vacated the objective. It didn't really achieve much, so yeah, let's see how that plays out. And no saves on the final thing. That unit of Berserkers is completely gone, so they're not able to go and help contest the objective either. My opponent moves their unit of spears up, and we're going to keep taking little pot shots at these trolls again. Still left on 1 wound, which is pretty frustrating, but more through lack of better targets than anything else. And yeah, rather than just being conservative with that unit. It's not got too many shots either. I just decided to move it up. I'm not going to win a game of sit back and let's shoot each other. So decide to just move it up, get it into the mixer. For that final wound on that final troll, I do still have 2 of the steam gun type attacks from the copters. Yeah, they are steam guns. Plus the pistol from the engineer. So I'm confident I can take it out, but it's still frustrating because it does mean that those shots are not going to be used elsewhere. And I'm realizing that at least one of these copters is going to have to go back and deal with the chariot. I'm just looking at kind of positions. In the end, I think I decide to take a shot with the copter that doesn't have the engineer on it first. Four hits through, but not able to get the job done. And this troll is actually in a really annoying position because it's like staring down the flank of my commander's unit. But I just kind of trust that the engineer is going to get the job done, and I move the copter to where I intended it, just to be able to get into the flank of this top unit of short bows with the 1 shaman. I position it like that because my opponent hasn't moved the giant yet. You see them moving it now, and probably would be able to get around. However, flying units have the advantage that they don't need middle to middle contact in order to charge. So I tried to kind of just position it so that the kind of middle of my copter would be hidden by this unit of short bows, if that makes sense. If the giant wanted to come around here and try and get a charge on, I wouldn't be able to. However, I'm still able to get that charge there. So thankfully, engineer pops out his pistol out the window of the copter, I'm assuming, fires a couple of rounds off and is able to get the job done on the final troll there. And then I move around here to deal with this chariot, and it does mean I get to shoot the steam gun at the chariot and get 3 wounds off. But yeah, again, a slightly hasty move there, and we'll see why in just a second. So originally I was a bit confused by this move because I was like, have they not realised this copter's there? I've got the flank, they don't have any charges into it. Are they baiting the charge to then flee? But then I realised, oh wait, no, just being able to squeak through front couple of wheels onto the objective. And that's pretty disastrous, really. Because, well, first of all, I had intended to kind of block that route off earlier in the turn. I'd planned to. However, you saw I moved it just a little bit hastily. I think if this was just even a few pixels up, maybe the opponent wouldn't be able to get through this gap. Maybe that meant I wouldn't be able to shoot. But I think, obviously, that would much rather my opponent not get onto that objective and forego the shooting, because this unit now is going to get charged. These slow-ass dwarves are over on this side. This model cannot, because it's flying contest objectives. And I'm thinking my one route to victory here, which was maybe claiming and holding objectives and like contesting this one and just taking up points here, has now completely disappeared, and in fact the opposite is happening. So between my opponent just absolutely melting things in the shooting phase, a pretty terrifying combat phase, and now winning objectives as well, I am not feeling good about this one. But my catapult is able to hold and stop the chariot chaining into the next one. My opponent popped Primal Fury on this unit, and yeah, that is 12 hits through. Only lose the combat score by 2, so it was a 7-up bravery, and that would have been huge if they stuck. But wowzers, what a rough position we are in. I'm pretty sure I've taken out next to nothing of my opponents. It feels like I've lost a lot already, and I'm also losing on objectives. So I'm pretty sure at this point, or close to this point, I messaged my opponent being like, this is possibly GG. I just don't see a path out of this one. My opponent it's just so many of those spells they're going to. They're just going to be able to melt through me in combat. I don't have the speed and maneuverability necessarily outside of the copters to get desirable combats either. So yeah, not looking good. One, I suppose, saving grace is because we were eventually able to get rid of that unit of trolls. If, and it's a big if, we can deal with the 2 shamans, then all of a sudden all of the melees go from unfavorable combats with all the spells to actually a bunch of dwarves more than capable of just tearing through, a bunch of puny goblins. So I think that's going to be the focus, getting rid of those spells. But as I said, I don't think I've taken anything out of my opponents so far, except for those trolls. Here thinking about charges, my opponent does have the opportunity to get sort of double team charges on both of these units, with the giant and this unit here, with the spears and the shortbows here. However, they do elect to chase the unit of miners that are fleeing here. I assume trying to get them off the objective, potentially. So again, maybe I shouldn't have made this charge because I'm going to move off the objective. But we're definitely not going to win this game by sitting around and playing patient. So once again, I don't really want to take the charge here, if possible, because the spears will get that extra rank of attacks. But I'm in a position to bait them into charging me by charging the flank of these shortbows here. As you see, my opponent thinking about whether or not they want to counter. They're probably kind of adding up all the different combats that are likely to happen here and already thinking about planning where they're going to want to deploy their spells. That's very frustrating because the double team there is going to prevent my commander's unit from running. And I think this charge, if my opponent flees, it's good for me because it means they're not going to be able to cast spells. If not, I think that's still okay. I still have the mechanical expertise. Again, feedback from the last video is could probably have done with activating that sooner to take advantage of the rerolling ones in shooting. Sometimes I think it's better to save it just so you have a better idea of a sort of better sense of where that additional defense is going to be more important. However, definitely in the last match, I could have done with using it earlier. This match could have done with using it earlier. However, I think there's been a couple of cases where actually the pistol shot from the engineer has been important. I probably would have popped it last turn, but as you saw, I got the pistol shot on the trolls, which was nice. So yeah, it's still saved, and I'm going to be able to activate it up here. And what an incredible stroke of luck. Really weird. I don't know, weird, but like unexpected. I suppose it makes sense when you think about how the fleeing charges happen. My opponent elects not to counter with this space and instead flee with this unit. That turns the unit to face them, and then they try to move to it, but excuse me, but they get blocked by any terrain or other units. So my unit minus here turned, but then wasn't able to move at all, putting it back on the objective, and that's really going to give me a glimmer of hope, as I say. Still not looking good, but if we can do a good job against these shamans, prevent those spells, we maybe are then favoured in combat. Let's see. You saw also something that I think we were both kind of expecting, which was this unit of shortbows wasn't able to fit here. So I think this happened in the last game, where it's like the worst of both worlds kind of thing. If only one unit got in, then, or only one unit charged, then I would be able to flee. If both charge, I'm not able to flee, but it's tying up 2 units. This is kind of the worst of both worlds, because I'm pretty sure we're not favoured against this giant into the flank, and it means this unit's free to kind of move about, get the flank on the vets, which is going to be pretty big because this unit's running. Miners aren't quite as good. I'm really relying on this unit of veterans plus the copters to do some work in this and then in preceding combat phases. I think you just saw my opponent there double up on this combat, putting Hex of Ruin from one shaman here and then the Primal Fury onto their own unit. And yes, I get that that is an important combat from our opponent in order to secure the objective, and I suppose guarantees destroying that unit. But yeah, I do wonder if maybe splitting them up or positioning them elsewhere, like something like here. Really hoping that's a really good hit roll. Fairly good saves from my opponent. Really hoping we can win this combat, get this goblin fleeing, and as we know, goblins, horrible discipline, yet we get them to flee. There's always a chance that once they flee once, they just keep fleeing. So again, just hoping to get this chariot out of the way. Only had 2 wounds left, and yet we're able to get the job done there, because even if it fled, it would just get in the way, and taking it out is nice. But here you see the work of Primal Fury plus Hex of Ruin. 8. Mine is dead. No chance of saving that and running, and because it's dwarves and they're slow, obviously not able to run outside of the charge range of that unit. But we get a couple of hits through despite the flank. Get a couple of hits through with the great weapon. Oh no, it's 2-hand weapons, I think, on the ranger captain there. So that unit ties with the giant. That's pretty good for me here. Again, we really want this unit to flee. However, not quite able to get the damage through, and they're able to make the discipline test. And now they're turned, and they've got all the attacks from this unit onto the copter. Not a whole lot of choice for me here in this combat phase. Pretty sure these are going to end up fighting, and going to get flank charged here into the vets. Don't necessarily want to take this charge because I want the shooting and the maneuverability from the copter. So yeah, not much I can do here. Not going to flee with the vets as we see yet. The expected charges happening. Hoping they can stand firm with their fearlessness. And I suppose we're in a position here now, which is, I suppose, something you want to do against any unit with spells or activated abilities, things like that, that can turn the tide in one combat, is just presenting your opponent with a lot of options. I'm sure my opponent would love to, well, get rid of all of these units. All of them are reasonably high priorities. But yeah, with the one shaman fleeing, and they are able to rally, but they're not able to cast a spell this turn. They've only actually got one. They've got to choose which of these combats they want to influence, and they decide that they really want my commander here dead. My opponent's still got the short bows here left to activate. So I'm pretty sure here, and I really want to get into the flank of the shaman. So rather than move up and take a shot, in which case this could turn into intercept, decide to forego shooting from the steam gun and just kind of hang back so I can get the charge. Just take my time there to make sure I was as far away as possible from this unit, while still being able to tag. This unit, my opponent moves up to block the charge. But again, with flying units, and I'm glad I bumped it forward just a couple more pixels, they do not need direct center to center contact. As long as it's in the arc, they're still able to, the unit is within their arc, they're still able to charge. So once again, this was the combat my opponent used Primal Fury on. They are able to take out both the crossbowmen, but we're able to get 3 wounds back on the giant as well, and the ranger captain survives. Here, I'm not expecting this to go well, but because they didn't use any of the spells up here, actually with the mechanical expertise, we're saving on a 2. And we do force the rally test, but my opponent survives with Snake Eyes. One dwarf here survives, not going to pass the rally test there, and honestly that's probably for the best. Just keeps that unit moving. And here I'm confident we can win this, and we do. And run would be really nice here, but not able to get it. But as expected up here, even though we lose the combat, the veterans stand firm and turn to face those short bows. And yeah, you see here, still just able to get in, and that's pretty big. Not sure that my opponent was really looking at that. Maybe they probably could have moved even a little bit further over and completely blocked that off. So quite fortunate there. My opponent elects not to flee, and it's probably a tough decision. Here I do want to take the shot now rather than pass, because at this stage in the game I'd rather have the first charge rather than the final activation. So we do that there. So this does allow my opponent to cast 2 spells this turn by not fleeing. However, if they had fled, they could have turned this unit, taken a shot, and then probably recharged the Copter, maybe my opponent was worried about them still fleeing, or maybe they were just valuing, this too much. I guess this was too much, too good to pass up, I should say. Capping this objective, and while also getting into the rear of the miners, and I don't have much in the vicinity. There's not much I can do about this. So even though we're even on objective score, thanks to that very lucky turn from the miners earlier on, my opponent has now got both secured, and we don't really have much in the way of... We don't really have much to move and contest them. My opponent, sensing that this is an important one, goes with the Hex of Ruin here. Let's see what they do with the second spell. Okay, so they go again, electing to double up their spells to just secure that one rather than, spread them out. This catapult, I haven't mentioned it yet, been doing an incredibly valiant job up until that point of holding that chariot up, though. But that has meant that they haven't been able to get into that second catapult. That catapult has just been free to shoot while, as I'm saying this, we miss what a huge point in the game. I'm able to take out the giant. The Ranger Captain survives, I think, on only one wound left. So, really not expected with that giant getting into flank when I think it was just 3 models plus the commander there. But we're able to eventually win that combat. The Dwarves' sturdiness really coming into play. And as expected, the copter at the top got absolutely destroyed. But now, we're starting to win combats. And it's giving us a little tea. Maybe it's like, maybe if we keep getting lucky. Because actually we win up here. And we get the fleas here again. Goblins, there's always a chance they can just continue fleeing. And actually, this here is big over on the right because the unit of vets can now actually recapture this objective. And we're really hoping for another flea here. And we get it. So all is not lost. They're going to get the charge down here. Obviously, eventually take out this unit of miners. But there's a little bit of hope here. So here I've got a choice of charges with the copter, with the engineer. My opponent's going to take this rear charge. I need to do this to kind of force it because actually I do want this unit to move off the objective so the captain can move over here. And there I make a potentially critical mistake because I don't take this charge. My opponent's looking at taking it anyway, and I could counter. But if I had taken a second to think about it, I got this commander unit here on 1 wound left, which is a good amount of points for my opponent to win if it is going to end up being a close game. But also, it's a unit, a foot unit. It can move across, potentially recapture this objective by not charging here. And again, my opponent's thinking about it. I think they really want to take this, but by not taking this charge, this unit can now shoot them off. They're not really going to be able to move over to where I want while also staying out of shooting range from this unit here. So potentially major blunder there, and I'm noticing it. I think I thought, realized that immediately after I hit the confirm charges button. However, because we flip the turn order, we do get first movement and an opportunity to make up for our mistakes. So even this is probably not the most ideal use of the copter this turn. We are able to move straight in front and block this unit's movement. I'm hoping it isn't able to pivot just enough to get into the arc here. But we get both shots and able to actually do a pretty good number on these goblins as well. So yeah, looking at it here, don't think my opponent's going to be able to just pivot the unit slightly to take the shot. And thankfully we are not punished for our mistake there. Get some nice saves from the copter, which is actually going to be big because looking at the map, I'm expecting to kind of lose here. Really need this unit not to run and turn and fight. And I'm not going to be able to get onto this objective, but at least I can stem the bleeding of my opponent getting objective points by capping this one. And this is starting to look like it's going to come down to the wire. Like every point is going to matter. One of those games. My opponent currently has 3 units running. Love to see them continuing to run off the board, because yeah, at this point every point's going to matter. So us saving there means that once this combat happens next turn, which is inevitably going to happen. Well, actually, I could have saved and shot at this, but either way, both these units have a commander attached to them. So the winner of that combat is going to be huge in terms of objective points. Now here I'm looking at this unit. I'm thinking that if I go straight down and I'm able to get into the rear here, I don't think they're going to be able to come up and countercharge. But then I realise I'm being stupid. I think it's again these sort of example of these almost heuristics, or these like we autopilot into being like, well, a rear charge is better than a flank charge, so I want to position it where I can get a rear charge. If I think it through, this unit is always going to be moving up to step on its objective anyway. So it doesn't matter if it's in the rear or flank, because it's never going to take that. It's going to move onto the objective next turn. So yeah, realize that and just make sure it moves. So it's able to do that, but I don't think this unit would get there anyway, but just kind of ensuring it. And in fact, my opponent then decides to take them to the right to go and contest this objective. And we're on turn 6. So next turn is the final turn. It does mean, I suppose, my opponent going this way forces my vets to turn and get back on the objective rather than chasing down these other units. So I guess good play from my opponent there. This catapult not able to emulate the other's sturdiness and goes down to the chariot. And yeah, really what a huge roll there. Really didn't want them to flee, because that means we can turn and potentially take this out. We're in the final turn. Neither of us have many options for charges. I do think about maybe not charging here and just shooting, but I think I've got a much better chance of taking this unit out. Or actually, I don't even need to take it out. I just need to get it to run, because final turn, opponent's not going to have an opportunity to rally them. And there are no other opportunities for charges. So I don't know. I'm never one for like adding up points, because I mean, don't know how much difference it's going to make. However, here my opponent did rally on the last turn their shaman and their unit of shortbows. So really glad I did in the end not move down here to stupidly think about the rear charge here, because my positioning meant I could then get as high as possible, still capping the objective. And my opponent looks at this for a while, but thankfully, it's just out of range. This unit again is on 1 wound, and I mean, we'd already tagged the objective. There's nothing my opponent can do about that, but is a good chunk of points. So my opponent there, understandably, really taking their time, but it must be like pixels in it, not able to take the shot there. They do get the opportunity to at least get some points by knocking this unit down to half, but they're not able to do that either. And now, I believe, it's just going to come down to these combats, and I was going to say this rally test, because they're now going to run off the board. And it's really going to come down to the wire. So, only able to get 1 wound through, so not able to win that combat. So, this is a big one. Can we force my opponent's shaman to run? Nice hit there. My opponent's saving on 6s, so get 3 hits through. We win by 3. My opponent needs to roll 3, and they don't. So that is going to do it, and we're able to sneak victory from what I thought, thinking about turn 2, was almost certain defeat. We were very lucky in a couple of places. That unit of miners pivoting after the flee in such a way that I could get back on the objective was absolutely huge. The giant not being able to get the job done against the ranger captain unit was huge. And then even the ranger captain surviving on the 1 wound, getting those points there. Really close game. I don't think I played especially well. I think I made a couple of small mistakes. I think my opponent played really well. I got a little bit unfortunate in a few of those areas, but very happy to take the win here. Not going to lie, and that puts us on 2-1 once again for the second SOVL Discord Cup. Check out the Discord if you're interested in these. There'll be the sign up for the next cup going up soon, I'm sure, at the time of recording this. Really fun, open to all skill levels. Check out the other PvP content creators in the description. And let me know what you think of the format of these. These last 3 videos have been slightly different because the replay hasn't been working. So I've been commentating over my match. Let me know if you prefer it, or if you preferred the older way, commentating over SOVL replay. Like, subscribe, comment. It's really good for small channels like this. And until next time, bye-bye.